The Nissan Patrol has been around in this shape since 1998, so it's fair to say that most four-wheel drivers think that they know just about everything there is to know about the venerable Nissan Patrol. But all is not what it seems. I'm going to show you 10 things that you probably don't know about the Patrol, and let's see if any of these leave your low range lever in neutral. In the Patrol, you can actually shift from two-wheel drive high through to four-wheel drive high on the fly at speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour. And you don't even need to put the clutch in if it's a manual vehicle. But what you might not know is if you mechanically lock in those front hubs, then you can change at speeds up to 80 kilometers per hour. Back in the early 1990s, Australia's federal government forced a rationalisation of the Aussie car industry, and they called it the Button Plan, after Senator John Button. Now, for Nissan, that meant a new relationship with Ford Australia. And what Ford did was actually rebadge the Nissan Patrol the Ford Maverick.
It's time to release the new thoroughbreds from the Ford stable. New four-wheel drive Mavericks. They're different. Powerful six-cylinder petrol and diesel engines, limited slip differentials, and coil spring suspension on wagons and hardtops to give you a ride more like a car. New four-wheel drive Mavericks. They're different, and they're Fords.
Which probably makes that the most reliable Ford ever. If you drive a Patrol with an automatic transmission, well, you might see this little light come flashing on your dashboard, and usually it'll be after you've been four-wheel driving. So, what is it? Well, it's the auto transmission park light, and what happens is you've got the transfer case in neutral, and therefore park will not work. So, if you see this little light going off, take note. When you're changing a back tyre on the Patrol, it's a handy thing to know exactly how the transmission works in concert with the handbrake, because if you jack up one of these tyres and the vehicle's on a little bit of a slope, the differential action could actually allow your four-wheel drive to roll away. So we need to take the precaution of actually chocking the front wheels of your four-wheel drive just to make sure that she doesn't roll away. Going through water crossings and mud holes is always a great fun part of four-wheel driving, but sometimes, well, it doesn't always go to plan. And if you get stuck in there, you can have some serious water ingress into your four-wheel drive. And I'm not just talking about through the doors. There are two places that really should be checked, and that's the bell housing and the steering knuckles. When it comes to the steering knuckle, you want to remove one of the lower cap bolts and use a nice thin bar to probe in there and see the quality of that oil. Once you've checked it, replace the bolt and tighten it up. And while you're under there, check the bell housing plug as well. Undo it and see if there's any water draining out. And then of course, do it up before you hit the track again. As four-wheel drivers, we can get a little bit excited as to what we want to take away on our trips, and the vast majority of it can often land on the roof. But did you know that the Patrol has a maximum roof rack capacity of 100 kilos, which is actually better than a lot of other four-wheel drives that are actually down to about 45 kilograms. Now, keep in mind that when you take into account the weight of the roof rack, well, you really only have room for, say, a spare tyre and rim and maybe a couple of jerry cans full of water. So be very careful next time you're loading your four-wheel drive and make sure you don't go over that 100 kilo capacity. Well, if I haven't stumped you yet, I reckon this next point just might. Well, just about every four-wheel driver in Australia recognises this vehicle as the GU Patrol. But did you know that those letters GU have nothing to do with the vehicle or with Nissan themselves? It seems that after the GQ Patrol, which was actually the Y60, the Australian media wanted a successive model name, so they called it the GU Patrol. But its real name, the Y61.
But it took 10 years to make a four-wheel drive better than the original. The all-new 1998 Nissan Patrol. It took us 10 years to make a better one.
And the next model Patrol to come out this year is officially called the Y62. In a bit of recent news, the Series 8 Patrol will actually have rear differential locks right across the range, from the DX right up to the TI. Now for me, this really defines the Nissan Patrol as a seriously hardcore four-wheel drive. Now this is a standard feature, not an extra, and it's the sort of thing that you only need in proper off-road situations, and is very rarely included as an option when buying a new vehicle. Now past Patrols have had this included, but it's a welcome addition to the current series. Diff locks will turn your already capable four-wheel drive into an absolute weapon. What they do is force the left and right wheel to turn at the same speed, rather than make use of the diff, which will cause the easiest wheel to turn and produce less torque in the other. So if you've got one wheel up in the air, which would stop most vehicles in their tracks, you switch on the diffs and you should be able to crawl right over the obstacle. Something to remember though that's pretty important is that because you're eliminating that differential action, you should only use the differential lock in low speed off-road situations, certainly not high speed or out on the highway. The Nissan Patrol is reputed to have the strongest running gear in the four-wheel drive industry, and you need to look no further than the off-road racing four-wheel drives. Whether it's weekend competitions or the Outback Challenge, the Nissan Patrols always seem to land at the front of the pack. The running gear in the Patrols are known for being absolutely bulletproof. From the early days of being a military-based vehicle to present, each generation has become harder than the last. In fact, in the 2010 Outback Challenge, 25 out of 30 vehicles were Patrols. Now that is something to boast about. And now for the final point, the number one thing that you might not have known about the Nissan Patrol. Did you know that back in 1962, the Nissan Patrol was the very first vehicle to make a crossing of the Simpson Desert in Central Australia? Driven by adventurer and all-round rockhound Reg Sprigg and navigated by his wife Griselda, and with two kids Marg and Doug on the bench seat, this short wheelbase, packed to the brim, essentially factory standard four-wheel drive G60 Patrol managed to cross the desert, more than 1,000 dunes, endless boggings and spin effects. The crossing had been tried before in a number of different vehicles, but it was only the G60 Patrol that managed to come out successfully on the other side of the desert near Birdsville. Now, in 2011, the Nissan Patrol celebrated its 60th anniversary globally. But in 2012, for us Aussies, that is the big celebration, the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the very first Simpson Desert vehicular crossing. So there you have it, the top 10 things that you probably didn't know about the Nissan Patrol.